So let's talk about what it looks like for a music person to deliver stems to a stage, to a mixer. So as those of you who have watched my videos or have attended the seminars know, I'm mixing, but I'm mixing into stem and different food groups. Maybe it's, depending on the film, if there's a lot of separation and it's a big action film, I'm going to try to deliver more separation to a re-recording mixer to be able to do things. For example, like if there is a solo instrument that is getting in the way of dialogue, what would be my choice? Would my choice be to turn down all of the music to clear that solo instrument to clear dialogue, or could we just turn down that solo instrument so that we can keep the music as loud and proud as possible? So my job is to give the re-recording mixer the ability to play the music as loud and proud as possible, or as appropriate for the film, for many reasons. Number one is that if there's a single instrument that's getting in the way of dialogue or a sound effect that they really want, they can control it. But also, number two, there's actually three very, very good reasons. Number two is that Ron has this entire world of Atmos that I'm actually not, in case of Ron and in the case of Dune, delivering an Atmos mix. And we'll explain why that is actually an advantage on many movies. I'm not delivering an Atmos mix, and Ron gets the ability to, subtly and with respect to the music, be able to open things up to the world, theatrical world, more than I can, even though I have Atmos in my mix room. Because now he's hearing the music against these big sound effects that are coming in from the back and the right. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, because it's pretty hard for you to be able to second guess that without hearing all the other elements. So, the most important thing is that we have control over that we can then blend all of the sounds together in one place, which is the final mix. So we did talk about pre-dubbing. This is more the final mix where you have all the dialogue, all the music, and all the sound effects coming together. And that's the first time where a director really gets to see and hear his film all together in one spot. So it's a lot goes on in the final, and there's a lot of people weighing in, and I've got a backfield of people telling me what to do all day. But it's great when you get great tracks from sound editors, dialogue editors, right. Alan, and we get all these tracks together, and you've gone through pre-dubbing it. Now our goal is to put it all together, and that's done on the dub stage or the mix stage in the final mix.
And another hugely important reason for that is guaranteed in any movie you work on, and certainly in movies that are as, because we're going to talk about Dune after this a little bit, in certain movies as dense and as atmospheric as Dune, there are going to be decisions made on the stage that aren't going to fit the music the way it is constructed. So you need the ability to edit the music in a way that is not linear in the fact that you're cutting the entire music at this point and coming back in at this point. You might want to just cut the strings, or you might want to just move the percussion back 8 bars so that you can roll into the percussion because the sound effect is getting in the way of, or it's too abrupt, or a million. I'm just making things up now, but there are thousands and thousands and thousands of decisions that go into this. There's just no way on a music-only stage that you can sort of own all of those decisions and go, nope, this music is done. It doesn't work that way. Unless you're John Williams, and even John Williams isn't really the case, unless it's a full orchestral recording where, and we do that sometimes, where you don't have the ability to make those decisions and you are delivering a full mix. The one minor example of it working a little bit differently was a film Ron and I did 2 years ago called Gemini Man, where they had thrown out the score, and the director, Ang Lee, wanted the music mixed by me in Atmos. So they actually brought me to New York, gave me my own dub stage, and all of the dialogue and sound effects stems that Ron and his partner had already pre-mixed. Now, they still weren't the final mix, but they were much, much closer to what it all was going to sound like. And I could literally leave the music and the dialogue and sound effects sort of at their level and mix around it a little bit. Now, it didn't get them all the way home, but it certainly got them to second base.
That was a huge help. And we don't always get that because it's usually things are done separately. Alan's in his own world doing his score. I'm doing dialogue over here. Sound effects guys over there. And it all comes together in the final. In this case, like you mentioned, we had already done kind of a one pass through the movie. So we had dialogue and effects in a pretty good place. And now we're changing out the score to another composer. He's able to do that and play these at level, which is a huge plus because we were very under the gun at that point because we've used up a lot of our time. There's a big time crunch and we're replacing a score and everybody gets to sit around and watch me put in a whole new score very quickly. So that was a big advantage of Alan doing that and monitoring that way.
And in that case, it really did pay off because the score got written so quickly, the composer, Lauren Balfe, who's phenomenal, didn't really have time to finesse the imaging and the panning, and he was working with big gorilla gloves on, going like this and making shit happen as fast as he could because it had to get done. And a lot of that world was left to me. And I think, Ron, maybe in a similar way, is once you start building your template, once you start knowing what your sound is, once you start knowing what your environment is, you can sort of save a lot of these things and apply them to other pieces, in my case of music, and in places you know what your dialogue is going to sound like, you know what your outside dialogue is going to sound like. Believe me when I tell you, he would not have had the time to do that on that because it was a lot.
Yeah, and that's a special circumstance. It's not always that way, but in that case, it was a huge help. Part of what I do in the final with what Alan gives me of all the different stems and with the score is I have the score, I have source music, songs. So there's all these different elements. Alan doesn't always get to mix all of that, but a lot of songs and things come in as 2-track, just like a CD. Here you go, here's a song. And of course, sounds great in your car, sounds great at home stereo, but when you go into a film Atmos situation, needs a lot of love. You need to really change the EQ a bit, shape it, spread it, do all these sorts of things depending on how it's integrated in the film. With the score, like he was saying, there's elements that may not play well with others. Like if you have a certain sound effect there and it needs to be there, it's on screen, there's no change in that. We need that. And we have something come in, maybe a big drum hit or whatever it is, I'm going to either have to duck it or we're going to have to do some clever editing.
Or
moving it, all kinds of ways to make these all these elements fit together. And that's the key. There's like transitions, especially when you're fading into things and how you bring it into a scene. You keep it understated maybe, and you're just kind of, a bed in there that kind of gives you a feeling. And then the score really picks up and there's a melody and the themes, and you really clear the themes and make sure those are good. Maybe you take some sound effects down at that point. There's a balancing act that goes on every single day, every minute that you're mixing on a film. And it's complicated. There's a lot of stuff. And every once in a while, when we start a film, I sit there and it's like, how am I going to do this? Like every movie. And then when you start getting into it, it's like, okay, cool, we can do this and do that and change this balance, really focus in on this. And the movie really tells you what it needs if you're really listening. And the key to this is being able to detach yourself and sit back and go, okay, I'm an audience member. What would I like this movie to sound like? Is it telling me the story? Am I getting the dialogue? Can I hear the dialogue? Is the score really cool? Is it emotional? Is it carrying that weight? Do the sound effects play what they need to do? Is it grounded in reality at this point? All these sorts of elements. And if you're paying attention to the story, and most importantly, the director and what he wants, not you, it's not your movie. You have to understand their vibe and what they want and their concept and follow what that is, and then make all this happen with all these different elements. So it's a really fun, very creative process, but it's extremely complicated, and there's a big time clock on you because everybody's salary's going, the stage is expensive. We have a deadline to meet. We only get 10 days or 14 days or whatever it is. It can be very tight. So you have to be really quick at understanding what the director wants, understanding the tracks you get, and what to do with them. And if the director says, I want this out of the scene, you got to know immediately, like, great, I'm doing this, and you try it. Now, of course, you make mistakes. And of course, you try things that didn't work, and you're like, I got to come up with something else. And sometimes it's a total rabbit out of the hat, like, I don't know, let's try this. And it works. And you're like, fantastic. It's tough, so following with all those elements and what the director wants, that's the key. And if you can assess that in a fast manner, the quicker the better, and really zoom in on that and find out what you need to do, that's the key to mixing on a film. You can get lost in the weeds very easily. There's a billion tracks, there's tons of plugins, there's reverbs, there's all kinds of stuff to play with, and you can sit and micro focus all you want. In the end of the day, it's like, did that movie play well? Right. Did it really get the story across? Did you find what the director was after? That's all I'm worried about, is making the director happy, making the story work, and the film as good as it can sound.
It's a different world. And I actually, when I first did a dub, really enjoyed that collaboration, that choreography. And as it turns out, I have this with a couple of mixers, no one as much as I have it with Ron, is there's a certain sort of like sameness of the way we hear the aesthetics of music that seems to work, even with, it's sort of an unspoken thing, and so when I deliver music, it seems to be working for him. When I go listen to the dub, it seems to be what I would have wanted if I was doing the dub. And again, that doesn't always happen. But there are times, and I'm going to talk about something that we both had to deal with, and very often it happens in motorcycle chases, but let Ron tell you a little bit about a motorcycle chase we had to do together.
You talking about Gemini Man?
Oh, yes.
How did I guess? That was tough. I mean, they're like dirt bikes, so they're real, like, two-stroke, wound out really fast.
And the director wanted every sound of every rev to be heard all the time. He wanted it to sit at 10 and stay at 10.
Yeah. So now you're talking about a mid-range grating sound that can really cut through anything. And you're trying to mix a score that has a lot of mid-range and things in it, percussion and strings and all these things, brass. How do you make all of those, food groups fit together? That was really hard, very tough to do. I tell you, mixing in Atmos really helps a lot too, because you can pull things away from the screen and use your mid-surrounds, your overheads, all these things, the height, all that. It spreads the score out enough that allows sound effects who have to play dead center on screen, you can wrap around them and still keep your level up and your tonality going without, mucking everything up, trying to I can't hear the bike now, I can't hear the dialogue. But if you do that in a good way, it can really help. You have to be careful with that, because the more you do that, the more disconnected you get from the screen, and the movie's up there. It's not back there. And that was one of the first things Denis talked about on Blade Runner before the first temp mix. We were sitting down talking about things, and he's like, yeah, I don't like surrounds really. I don't like things behind me and making me go like this. And, the movie's up here. I don't understand what you guys do with all that. So we were trying to talk him into using Atmos, or at least 7.1, and he's kind of shying away from it. And I said, well, I'll tell you what we'll do. Let's just do a test scene. We'll do this temp mix. We'll kind of show you what we're thinking, but we really want you to understand the importance of the surrounds and Atmos and being able to use these tools and these cool formats. So we did that, and we showed him. I said, I promise you, I will not put something that will turn your head. And
that's the first thing I always tell everyone is, you don't want someone sitting in a movie, you don't want to do anything to make them turn their head away from the screen, because then you're definitely not doing your job.
Yeah, you're detaching yourself from the story, and it's say, hey, look at me. No one wants to hear your mix moves.
Right.
It should be seamless. It should be inviting, and you go along with the story, and it pulls you into the film. My partner, Doug Hemphill, is one of the best mixers I know and a real mentor to me, and we sat together for years. He mixes all the sound effects, and we've done a number of films over the years. He's a master at that, of allowing you space and clearing for dialogue, all these sorts of things that make him who he is, and he's very artistic at the same time. That combination, like Alan was saying, that we hear things the same way, very much so with Doug and I. And it's good to have a really solid partner who has your back, understands what you're doing. You just have this flow, and you keep going, and you hardly even have to talk to him sometimes, because we already know what the other one's thinking. Back to mixing in Atmos, a lot of things are able to pull out and move out from the screen. Some things are not, and they don't do so well when you do that, like percussion, solo instruments sometimes. The main orchestra you kind of want tied to the screen more. You can use reverbs and other things, maybe delays, things like that to fill out the back. But there's like, keyboard pads, guitar, some things that are more ambient play really well when you pull them back out and it fills the room nicely, but it doesn't detach you from the score being tied to the film. And that's an important issue that a lot of people try with Atmos. It's like, great, we've got all these speakers and we do that. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute, movie's up there. We push it a lot in Dune and some other movies. And we, as far as I'd ever want to go, is like, it's immersive. It's all around you. But I try to do it in a way that is glued in with the sound effects and it's all tied together. We hear all the dialogue and it allows you to be inside the movie and it wraps around you. Ang Lee had the best comment ever. We were doing Life of Pi and he was unable to hear the Atmos mix because he had to go on this big junket of press and do all these interviews, traveling all over the world promoting the movie. Now, Life of Pi, I think, was the second or third movie ever in Atmos. This was like a big deal, and no one had really discovered what Atmos could do or had gotten to play with it. So, I mean, it was a very clunky thing at first, but now it's all integrated and we can do it all the time in every session. Before, we literally went to another stage and had one Pro Tools and we had one panner. It was crazy. So it took a long time. We spent 2 weeks on it.
I want to go back and talk about something that you just mentioned is the decisions that are made in the music as opposed to in the world of surround. And again, where Ron and I are aligned. But so that's a lot of what I try to do for Ron is make sort of the basic decision of where things are going to sit. And him and I have a very, similar opinion about that, about the orchestra sort of rooting itself in the front. And then I think about it as horizontal and vertical. So anything that's vertical, I don't think should come off the screen for many reasons. One is an old school thing where theaters, when they were set up, weren't necessarily delayed properly. So if you put percussion in the surrounds or on the sides, they could very well be early to the score, and that could be a mess.
Or they ping pong, like
or they ping pong
like that. It's
right.
Like terrible.
So going back from day one, my first film, 1994. I took that out, but then I realized that is for the most part a good decision. And then the horizontal stuff, the guitars, the synths, the things that give you width and depth, and there are ways that I use to do that. To like I'll use the Pentio or the Nugent to take some of that and take my stereo image and turn it into surround. Again, with the acoustically recorded stuff, we have the ability to do the acoustic space, the actual putting up microphones to go to those different places, and then maybe gracefully moving some spot mics off the screen. Like when I work in 7.1, I sort of think as the side speakers as my left and right, or a little bit extended out from the front, so I have a little bit more width in general. But so that's, for those of you who are thinking, well, what's Alan's job and what's Ron's job is, what I want to do when I work with a great mixer is I want him to have one finger, push the fader up and go, damn, that sounds great. Limit his decisions because he's happy with the way things are, but also give him the freedom to take this creation, this concept, and expand upon it.
Yeah, take a movie like King Richard.
You want to check on the kids? Let's check on the kids. We got future doctors and lawyers, plus a couple tennis stars in this house.
The chances of achieving the kind of success that you're talking about.
Phenomenal score. Love Chris. He's just an amazing talent. Very orchestral score. Not a lot of samples or anything like
samples.
that. Yeah, it was great. That's a great example of a score that just came in and I put it up. I'm like, so good. I didn't have to do a whole lot to that one. Of course I do, transitions. I'm playing, levels with the dialogue and other sound effects, but it's just so beautifully transparent and it just flows into the movie. Credit to Alan for his mixing. Also a credit to Chris Bowers for writing it and performing it so well that he was listening and paying attention to dialogue. You could tell. Because I'm telling you, a lot of composers turn the dialogue off and there's my music and it's a music video. It's like, yeah, it doesn't work that way. Chris, obviously very in tune with the
Right.
movie, the dialogue, knew where to come in and out, where to put the solo things, how to, do transitions and whatnot. So it was just a pleasure putting that in. It just flows right in. It was gorgeous.
And that brings up a point that different kinds of movies have different sort of aesthetics about that. When you're doing a dialogue-driven romantic comedy, it's not going to be the same thing as doing Dune or doing Gemini Man, where you have a motorcycle chase or something like that. When you're supporting dialogue, the thing I discovered early on with mixing, and I think on that Preacher's Wife session, was just how much emotion automation can give you.
It's tricky. Like you can really help it, you can really hurt it. So you have to be careful. What you don't want to hear is a fader move.
Right.
Like, oh, they turned that up. And you're like, oh man, I blew it. Because that's not my job. My job is to give you, here's a great quote from Ang Lee. He says, I want it to wrap the audience in empathy. I'm like, damn, that's a good, I got to use that. So I'm stealing that from Ang, but it's great because that's so true of what you're doing. And most of the time it's like imperceptible, the beginnings of cues. And you just want to like come out of nowhere. You've got backgrounds and dialogue and stuff playing. So you can kind of sneak in there very stealth-like. And then all of a sudden it's there and you're like, wow, this is cool. And then it starts to fill up. And then when it's a very emotional point, you need to be careful how you push those faders because, you do not want to do it like the start of the thing of a line or a phrase. And then you push because then it's like, oh, obviously you hear the fader move. So maybe it's like going with it. It's a feel thing and it's a taste thing. I can't sit here and tell you how to do it. You have to listen and feel it. And that's the key. It's all about being the audience member, having good taste, knowing what works and what does not work. And you have to experiment with that with yourself because it's a real feel thing.